While the federal government is shut down, Texas lawmakers head back to work. The 86th legislation starts on Tuesday, and there is a lot of work to be done. Governor Greg Abbott tweeted that school finance reform and property tax reform definitely will be top priorities. We will also begin dismantling the flawed Robin Hood scheme that has failed our schools. We talk a lot about Robin Hood, but exactly where does this money go? Our David Schechter verifies.
In English folklore, Robin Hood is the hero, stealing from the rich, giving to the poor.
But in Texas, we use his name as one way to talk about how we fund education. And some people think Robin Hood is a villain.
We cannot live with this. Not one more year, not one more day.
Robin Hood is supposed to give all kids a fair chance, but some districts say the system itself has become unfair. Is that true? Is Robin Hood broken?
An exploration of the Texas property tax system with Caitlin Griffin and Roy S. Idrach.
Thank you for being with us here today, Mr. Idrach, to explain to us the Texas property tax process.
Texas property tax. What is property tax? What is Robin Hood law?
Tax. And Mr. Idrach, can you also elaborate on what is the Robin Hood law?
Well, the Robin Hood law was established in 1993 by the Texas legislation. And the reason that it was done was because a lot of the appraisal district, they were not appraising the value of the property at the level that it needed to be. And therefore, the state controller's office audited them and decided that something needed to be done. And at that time, the Supreme Court ordered the legislation to come up with an answer to the solution on not taxing the property at the proper value. And therefore, this is what created what is known today as the Robin Hood law.
How it became law. Who is responsible to execute the law? It affects everyone who pays property tax, some more than others. What are the consequences of the appraiser's office not keeping up with property valuation?
Thank you for that information. So let's go ahead and dive a little deeper into how it became the law. Who is responsible for executing the law?
Well, the executing the law is actually part of the legislature, and then they kind of make responsible the Attorney General to make sure that it gets done. And actually what happened is they affect everyone. The property tax affect everyone one way or another. And there's other issues that it comes with it.
Okay, what are some of these consequences of the appraisal office for not keeping up with the property valuations?
There are very, very serious consequences if the office of the appraisal office do not maintain the proper level of property value based on retail value of the property. Within 2 years, the auditing of the Attorney General office can live by very serious consequences to the communities when those happen, and we're going to see later on the video.
Thank you.
There were 217 school districts in 2017 in the state of Texas. Do you pay less taxes when an entity like a city reduces the tax rate? There is not a right answer. Why?
In 2017, there were 217 school districts in the state of Texas. Do you pay less taxes when an entity like a city reduces the tax rate?
Well, that really is not right answer to that, but I'm going to tell you why. What happened is that even if, take for example, the city of Floresville recently with one of the elected officials, she managed to increase the standard deduction for people over 65, 100%. So they were having like $3,000 or $15,000 tax exemption. So now it got, starting 2025, going to be 30,000. So everything sounds good, and it so happened that today, as we're recording, is election day. But I guarantee you that what's going to happen here is that when 2025 comes in and this thing take effect, these senior citizens are going to pay more than what they was paying before, even thought they're getting $30,000 exception. And this is because the property value increase and the inflation rate built into property year to year. So eventually, this exemption get washed out, or the city might require that in order to maintain their support and need to pay employees and maintain the city, they will have to increase the tax rate. And therefore, between the property value increase and increase on tax rate, the $30,000 will not do much to it. What is really to be done is completely abolish it, and that's not going to happen.
As we were talking about exemption that it was given by the city of Floresville, here's a sample of the agenda that it was where the vote took place. It was 5-0, if I remember right, and it was on March 28, 2024, at the City Hall Council Chambers. Item I is a consideration and action regarding to give the senior citizen, it do have some good intentions, but as I mentioned before, property tax increase in value, $30,000 isn't going to be enough, and the right thing to do is to remove the property tax. Now, if the city wanted to do justice, they will remove the property tax from the houses. They don't take any other tax away from it, but it will give them a relief. However, here's the problem. The city will have to then make up that difference on their budget and where the money is going to come from. So with that, let's move on with the video.
The Texas property tax system consists of officials who administer the process, property tax agencies, and the state laws or regulations that govern what they do. Officials in the property tax system consist of the governing bodies, a group of officials, who oversee the operations of local property agencies, also known as taxing units. There are several types of local taxing units. Not all are mentioned here for the sake of time. Cities, school districts, counties, junior colleges, and special districts that collect and levy property tax to fund annual public services. Who are the special districts? Cities, county, and junior colleges. They are special because of their access to other revenues that the school district does not have. They have access to other revenue sources like local sales tax. School districts rely on local property tax, state, and federal funding, no sales taxes. The property owner, whether residential or business, is responsible for paying taxes and has a reasonable expectation that the taxing process will be fairly administered. The property owner is also referred to as the taxpayer. Appraisal district's duties. Appraisal districts is administered by a chief appraiser. Appraise your property's value as of January 1st each year. Market conditions and who owns the property on that date determine whether the property is taxable, the value at which it can be taxed, and who is responsible for paying the tax. More about the market condition later. The appraisal office is not the one that raises the taxes. That is done by the taxing units mentioned earlier. A board of directors governs the appraisal district. Local taxing units elect the board of directors and fund the appraisal district based on the amount.
Well, let me tell you about the appraisal office. A lot of people think that the appraisal office is the one that raises the tax and is the one that makes the life miserable with higher taxes. But that's not the case. The appraisal office is not the one that raises the taxes. This is done by the taxing unit mentioned earlier, like city, school district, county, ambulance, and we will see more of that later on, how the system works and who is the one that taxes the property. The appraisal office responsibility is only to establish a mandate by law of what the property value is, but not the tax.
Let me get ahead a little bit on this video and explain to you something that sometimes it gets confusing. This is what happened on the city of Land Pass, Texas. The law required that the appraisal district maintain evaluation between 90 and 95% of the sale price of the properties in the area. But the trick here is that in the event, you see, and this is the serious consequences, in the event that the appraisal office do not maintain the proper value, guess what happened? The Attorney General office can remove the funding from a school district. So this is not the fault of the appraisal office. It's a mandate by law that they must maintain 95% of the selling price, and there's no way out of that. We need to change the law, and the problem is not at the appraisal office. The problem is at the law. But I doubt it that ever change, as we're going to see later on. They tried to do that 5 years ago, and we got to nothing yet.
Of taxes levied in each taxing unit. Appraisal districts process applications for tax exemptions, special agricultural appraisals, and other tax relief. Please contact your local appraisal district for more information about your local appraisal process. Appraisal Review Board. An appraisal review board, or ARB, is a board of local citizens that hears disagreements between property owners and the appraisal district about a property's taxability and value. The local administrative district.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and discuss about the appraisal review board. An appraisal review board, an ARB, is a board of local citizens that hears disagreements between property owners and the appraisal district about a property's taxability and value. The local administrative district judge in the county in which the appraisal district is located appoints the ARB members. Around May 15th, the ARB begins hearing protests from property owners who either believe their property values were incorrect or were denied an exemption or special agricultural appraisal. When the ARB finishes its work, the appraisal district gives each taxing unit a list of taxable property.
In many counties, taxing units contract with the county tax assessor collector to collect all property taxes due in that county around October 1st. The assessor collector then transfers the appropriate amounts to each taxing unit. Although some taxing units may contract with an appraisal district to collect their taxes, the appraisal district does not levy a property tax. This is where many taxpayers get confused and blame the districts for the tax increase.
Mr. Idrach, do you mind helping us understand this a little bit better?
Okay, guys, let me say that this is a little bit complex, but here's our taxing cycle for in the state of Texas. And right now we're discussing the area that goes right here between May and July. In April, you received your district appraisal officer a document telling you the valuation of the property, what is being appraised. So let's start from January 1st so everybody can understand where this coming from. Actually, this is for the following year, but on January 1st, the appraisal at the district goes out and appraise the property based on the selling price, like I mentioned before. It don't have nothing to do with the property worth or do not worth. It has to do what it's sold for. Of course, they measure square footage and so on and try to be as fair as possible. But as you understand and you see this video, it's a difficult job for the office and the person in charge there to get this across. And remember, they are not the one that tax you. They are required by law to appraise the property at the fair market value of the selling price. So in January and April 30, they go and do all this stuff, and they list anybody that have an exemption, farmers or age, or maybe I'm moving to town and I bought a new house. I'm 84 years old like me. I have to go out there and go over there and let them know. They know that Roy Idrach live at this address from the records, but they probably don't know my age. So I say, look, I'm 65, I'm entitled to this, and then they apply that rule to all the different departments, how it's going to work. Now, here what happened. Between January 1st and April 30, that's what it takes place. By April, you get the paperwork, right? They send the notice in between April and May, and now you have the chance to go and see those guys that we talk about, that the county judge or the judges assigned to listen to you. This is the time, May and July. This is the ARB guys right here. Time for taxpayer protesting. This is where we are right now. In April, they send the notice, and once you get here, that is the end of their work in a way. Now, once all this finished between May and July, right, then the paperwork, everything, the price, what the actual cost is sent to the different taxing units. This is the demand. This is the one that can charge you and not charge you, reduce the tax or not reduce the tax. This is where it takes place. In this case, we're using the city of San Antonio because it covers more than what it does in Wilson County, but the law applies to the entire state, so it don't matter on what county. The law applies the same on all the county in the entire state of Texas. So in this case, we're dealing with San Antonio, which the taxing units are Bexar County, Road and Flood, San Antonio River Authority, the Alamo Community College, the University Hospital System, the Bexar County itself, City of San Antonio, and the Northside School District. Now, you might live in a place that the Southside School District, so you might live on the one that is East Side, but the school district gonna be there picking your pocket. The taxing unit, this is the guy that set the rate. The way they set it is that they either increase, decrease, or leave it the same. Okay? However, there's a technicality here, because they don't have to do anything if the property value goes up. And this is something that is built in our economy on the entire nation. It's not just on the state. To bring you an example and kind of get clear minds on this concept, remember that 1960, some of you are not all as I am, so you don't remember those things, but I used to pay 20 cents a gallon for gasoline, right? But I only make 35 cents an hour washing dishes. And my rent was $35 a month for my apartment. And you can buy a 3-year-old used car for $600. You might say, oh, wow, that's cheap, 30 cents a gallon. Believe me, it still costs the same today. We've been playing on with gimmicks from the federal government and everything else when they say, oh, we're going to give you a raise from $5 an hour to $20, mandatory law. Well, you give a raise, everybody got to pay more, everything going to cost more. But the government also going to collect more taxes. It's just that simple. So the same deal, the same scheme is in here. By law, right, the district appraiser has to maintain the proper value, and now we have a built-in inflation rate into it by the federal government, 5-6%, and they lie like crazy, nothing new. So all this guy gets the documentation, and they determine how much it's going to be. If they don't want to raise it, leave it the same. The paperwork going to continue, but this is done by Lake Taxing Unit. In August through September, the taxing unit, whoever they are, finally. So what I did, I broke it down from this section here, May to July, and broke it down some more here. So we end up right at this August to September. Now, what the paperwork done and goes to the tax assessor office, they are the one that send you the tax bill. You to the taxpayer. You are now the taxpayer. This is where you get your discount if you paid before the end of the month on that year, which is going to be October 31st. So the tax assessor unit comes in here before it gets hit and going to send you this paperwork. Then you look at it. Notice that now it's too late to complain. If you didn't do it back in May and July, between May and July, it's over. This guy already appraiser, and so you're going to find out how much you're going to pay, not right here. All you're getting here between May and July is the valuation. This guy come over here, and they can stick it to you, or give you a break and charge you less. And what I was mentioned before, especially with the City of Flores bill and you be age 65, I seriously doubted that those people in 2025, a year from now, a couple of years from now, by the time they paid in 2026, they're going to get paid less than what they're paying right now because the inflation rate. So we get on this spot of the wheel as we coming around, and now the tax payment, you get the notice, you know how much you're going to pay tax on it. If you got a mortgage, the mortgage company go ahead and pay for. That's what I had to do with the people that I finance property. I had to send them the tax bill. Sir, this is what you got. I send them one in April. Hey, you want to go and protest it? You got to go over there and do it, because I got a copy of it too. So the appraisal district notified me. I notified the one that I financing the home for or the property, and they work it out. To me, I had to collect it, so on the escrow account so I can go and pay in October. Now, you are a homeowner. When you go and pay this in October, if your home is fully paid for, because you financing it, you just don't know. You don't want to get a discount. If there's any discount, the mortgage company keep it so they can use that in the future for the escrow account so they don't have to ask you for more money. At least that's what I do. I don't know what other people do. So at this time, October 1st, the lot taxing unit start collecting the tax between 31st, which is due in January. Once you do that in January, notice that we don't go up in the wheel in a full circle. We're coming down now to the right. January 31st, the last year, the tax unit is the tax assessor's office will collect on their behalf all the money and send it to the city, hospital, whatever expenses they have or what they collect. By February 1, now guess what happened? Now we began charging penalty, and this is what I talk about. You don't want to make payment on this because the penalties is going to be part of the payment. So you're a property owner that you don't own to the mortgage company. The best thing to do is come over here before August 31st and pay the whole amount so you can get a discount. After this is a full value after October, and then as you go up to January, you pay a little bit more, and then the full amount is due January the 1st. Now, here what come up here. So if you didn't pay it and you're not making a payment, you're going to start defaulting. By July of the next year, so we're working on 2024 payment, by July of 2025, guess what? That's when the attorneys start getting involved into it. This is where the penalty and legal costs, notice the word legal cost over here, that's what it means. It's not legal cost. It's an attorney going to start working to collect the unpaid taxes, and in the event that you do not pay it, it might go a couple more years or whatever, then you get foreclosed on those property, which should go for auction at the property tax sale on the county. I think that in San Antonio, when I used to go and bet on properties that have been sold for taxes, it was every second Tuesday of the month, but that's irrelevant to what we're talking about it. The property eventually can be foreclosed. It's not going that way and you pay your taxes, the game is over, you're happy, and we start all over again January 1st of the following year where they're going to start appraising the district. And this is how the system works. But it is complicated because by the time that you go by this section here, that we go by May, you don't know how much you're going to pay in taxes. These guys over here, between August and September, are the ones that do that part. Those are the ones that do that part. They are the ones that either adjusted, a little behind, but by that time, you cannot come back to the appraisal office and say, this is too much. You got to, they don't want to change it. You cannot go to the city and tell it, well, you're charging me too much. Only if it was a mistake, maybe they might change it, but otherwise, that's what we're going to pay. So this is a convoluted, in a way, system that it makes it very hard for taxpayers. And I'm a firm believer that what we need to do is do away completely with all the property taxes, and let's have a sales tax that will take care of that. We got to pay one way or another. But I think that if we put a sales tax between the county and city and school and stuff like that, eliminate a lot of problem, and you paying as you go. Of course, that's going to leave a lot of people without a job. And this economy on this country is designed for creating jobs. It don't have to be that complicated, but this is our nature. We are living what? In a democracy that is driven by purchase, and that's what we're doing. if you put a sales tax on this and everybody pay, it will eliminate quite a few jobs. What do you think was going to happen with the judges? What do you think is going to happen to the tax appraisal office? You're going to put a lot of people out of work. So I don't think the tax ever going to be eliminated because of that reason. So I'm sorry for the time that it's taking you. It's taking me 14 minutes to explain this, but I had to have my say, guy, because I'm just as mad as you are about property tax. But there's not much I can do. I either pay it or they charge me for. Thank you for your time, and let's continue with the video.
Generally, taxpayers have until January 31st of the following year to pay their taxes. On February 1st, penalty and interest charges begin accumulating on most unpaid tax bills. For information about local taxing unit budgets and tax rates, please contact the individual school district, county, city, junior college, or special district available at texas.gov/property taxes. The path of a property tax dollar. You pay your property taxes to the local tax collector. The tax collector distributes funds to schools, cities, and other local governments. Local governments spend funds on schools, roads, hospitals, fire departments, other programs. The Comptroller Property Tax Duties. The role of the Comptroller's Property Tax Assistance Division, or PTAD, is primarily limited to an advisory role. PTAD conducts a biennial school district property value study, or SDPVS, for each school district for state funding purposes. The SDPVS, an independent estimate mandated by the Texas legislature, ensures that property values within a school district are at or near market value for equitable school funding. The comptroller's values do not directly affect local values or property taxes, which are determined locally. Why do they do it? The Texas Constitution sets out 5 basic rules for property taxes in our state. Taxation must be equal and uniform neighbors. This means that uniform appraisal is very important. The Texas Constitution provides certain exceptions to this rule, such as the use of productivity values for agricultural and timberland valuation. This means that the land is taxed based on the value of what it produces, such as crops and livestock, rather than its current market value. This special valuation lowers the tax bill for such land. Each property in a county must have a single appraised value. All property is taxable unless federal or state law exempts it from the tax. Generally, all property must be taxed based on its current market value. That's the price it would sell for when both buyer and seller seek the best price and neither is under pressure to buy or sell. This is where the law and taxpayer issues get sticky. So why are taxes so high? Texas law also requires the Comptroller's Office to conduct an appraisal district ratio study, or ADRS, to measure the performance of each appraisal district in Texas. Performed every 2 years, this study measures the uniformity and medial level of appraisals performed by an appraisal district within each major property category. Here is when the sticky part comes in. It is called the Robin Hood Law, the Lottery Education Fund, and the Texas Comptroller Office Law Mandate.
So it gets sticky because there was a time, for example, that the school district say, the appraisal district say, why I should raise the property value, and then my citizens, the citizen gonna pay more, and the state gonna turn around and take this money and give it to another school district. And this is go back to 1985. And so now we have a supervisor kind of checking that it's done as the law mandate.
So as we know, this is where things start to get a little sticky. It is called the Robin Hood Law. There's also a lottery education fund that is involved as well as the Texas Comptroller's Office law mandate. How do these three make the whole process a little sticky?
Right. The reason is that now you have the Robin Hood law that was established in 1993. Then you have the lottery education fund that was created when the lottery fund, the money went to the general fund. And a lot of people complain it and say, well, wait a minute. When Ann Richards in the 90s created the lottery, we voted because the money was going to use for education. And people believed and thought that by the lottery money being used for education, they will pay less school taxes. But that's not the way it is. And what happened is that the lottery cannot produce enough money to pay the full school budget across the state. Maybe on the northern state like New York and New Jersey, because the population and the high value of property and the more population paying lottery, they might pay for the school, but not in Texas. So it turned out to be that people say, hey, wait a minute, this money goes for education, and Richard said, but the Governor Richard said that that's what it's going to be used, and that's what I voted for. But it turned out to be that now the money, we find out that it's going to the general fund. So at that time, something needed to be done, and the money do go now to the educational fund. So they established a fund that all the lottery revenue cannot be deposited into the state general fund. You got to go into the lottery educational fund. So now we got the Robin Hood law on one side. We had now the educational fund, and then you have the Texas Comptroller Office mandate. And the way things get done, it now gets really sticky, because when you collect, when the money that is paid into the lottery education fund, the state reduce the state funding that they have on the general fund for lottery, so it come out of wash. So if they get $3 billion from the lottery, they turn around, okay, we were planning to put $10 billion for education, but now we're only going to give it $7 billion because they're getting $3 billion from the lottery. So it's a wash. But that keep the people that keep on complaining from the lottery money supposed to be education to keep bugging the lawmakers about why you're using the money for something else. But if you take it on the other side from the budget, it come out of wash. And the Texas Comptroller's Office is only to make sure the mandate that the property are properly taxed at the fair market value for the selling price, and it have nothing to do with what they do with the budget at the other end. So it kind of makes you wonder who dreamed all these schemes.
Yes, it's definitely beginning to get a little bit more complicated. So many see the Robin Hood as a villain, but lawmakers rely on it to pay for schools. So to understand Robin Hood law, also known as a recapture law, we need to go back to 1984. Most of us were not born yet, and the elders don't remember it.
Yeah, I remember. I'm 83 years old now, and it was it was done very quiet. people forget. So it actually took 9 years before it became law. So they forgot about it. But the whole thing started back in 1984 with the Edgewood School District in San Antonio filed a lawsuit in the state against the Alamo Heights or the Richard District School District that they have plenty of money to educate their children, and the poor neighborhood on the west side of San Antonio didn't have that kind of money because the property value was lower and the property didn't worth that much. So they kind of say, hey, it should be equal education. So why the rich neighborhood got lots of money? Why don't you share some of that with us? And that's when eventually now it was the mandate from the law that the money had to be used equally across all the students in Texas, and no one school district had more money to put better education in the children than the neighborhood down the street that he was not that lucky to be that wealthy.
So 9 years later, Robin Hood became law.
Now, as you can see, seems like this Robin Hood law that takes money away from the rich school district to give it to the poor is kind of a socialistic idea of sharing with those that don't have. And it upset a lot of people because we're not used to socialistic ideas.
Many see Robin Hood as a villain, but lawmakers rely on it to pay for schools. To understand Robin Hood law, also known as a recapture law, we need to go back to 1984. Most of us were not born yet, and the elders don't remember it. Starting in 1984, Edgewood Independent School District and dozens of other poor districts sued the state repeatedly to force it to correct huge disparities in resources among the state's public schools. The Texas Supreme Court mandated lawmakers come up with a way to make sure poorer school districts had access to enough money to educate their students. 9 years later, Robin Hood became law.
In 1993, the Texas legislature created Robin Hood, setting a cap on the amount wealthier school districts can keep and using money they raise beyond that cap to shore up poorer school districts. Wealthier school districts were among the loudest early critics of the program, objecting to the idea of relinquishing money to the state that they had raised by taxing local homeowners and businesses. Mr. Idrach, how does this exactly work?
Well, it's very interesting because what happened is they say, okay, they get a mandate that you better fix this problem, and the legislature come up and said, all right, we take care of that. We use a Robin Hood idea, and we're going to allocate, let's say, $5,140 per student that it was done at one time. However, the legislation did not take in consideration to the future of inflation costs. The school district got a lot of buses that they're going to have to pay more for gas. They're going to have to pay more for maintenance. And so inflation is not part of this. So for many years, even for the last 10 years that I know of it, the number had been the same for all the students. Even so, everything costs more. So if the school district, let's say from Alamo Heights and a wealthy neighborhood or someplace in Austin where there's a lot of money with $1 million homes and so on, they get $15,000 for students. They can only use $5,140, and the rest, the other money, has to be turned over to the state so they can distribute that money to the poor neighborhood. So then all the students will have available $5,140 each. And of course, that don't go too well with a lot of people. They don't agree that that's the way it's supposed to be, but that is the law and has to be obeyed for. And they kind of not too happy about this situation.
That's how the
Yeah.
Robin Hood law gets its name.
Right, so they take from District A to give it to B. They got less money, so District A say, "Hey, wait a minute, what happening? What happening to this? I'm collecting all the money and giving it to you, so you can share it with somebody else." And that put a lot of pressures on the school district to manage the situation.
Austin
So, for
ISD's
example,
81,000 students are economically disadvantaged, and more than 33% need additional services to learn English. They require more money to educate. Since then, Robin Hood has come calling to collect a heftier sack of cash from more and more school districts. In 1994, 34 school districts, many of them in Texas's wealthy suburbs, sent $131 million to the state through recapture. In 2018, 185 school districts paid more than $2 billion. More of them are large urban districts primarily responsible for educating low-income students and struggling to keep their enrollment numbers high. Austin Independent School District is a foster child for the controversial program because it gives up the most money to the state. $540 million last year, just under half of the property tax revenue it collected to run its schools. Its property values continue to soar as home values increase and corporations move their operations to the capital city. When local property values grow, the state uses that money first to pay for public education, meaning it doesn't have to put in as much. One of the reasons people don't want to get rid of recapture is the state makes money from it, Kaufman said. If they don't have recapture, the state would have to replace that with state money. Lottery for Education Fund. Since 1997, the Texas Lottery has contributed $31.9 billion to the Foundation School Fund, which supports public education in Texas. In fiscal year 2023, the Texas Lottery transferred $2.131 billion to the Foundation School Fund. There is only one problem with the system. The state entered the 88th legislature with nearly $33 billion approximately in its reserves and a list of funding plans for public schooling. This is a reserve, not the budget. The budget could be about $30 billion plus and $2.3 billion from the lottery. Rest assured there is a shortage.
Now let's shift over to the Lottery for Education Fund. Since 1997, the Texas Lottery has contributed $31.9 billion to the Foundation School Fund, which supports public education in Texas. In fiscal year 2023, the Texas Lottery transferred $2.131 billion to the Foundation School Fund. So how does the Lottery for Education Fund now also impact?
Right, so what it does is that the Lottery Education Fund comes in and they got, I think, the $30 billion budget. You get $2.3 million for the lottery, $1 billion for the lottery. But the problem is there's going to be a shortage because the budget is $33 billion. So now we still have $3 billion short. And last time, I think a couple of years ago, the legislation turned around and said, well, we short $3 extra billion for education, but we don't want to put no more money from the general fund because of all the expenses that we have in the budget. So therefore, they kind of told the school district, you have to make it up by raising the property tax to make up the difference that we cannot give. And this is amazing because we know for the fact that the money that comes from the school fund is deducted from the general fund where they produce the money to be given to the school. So it's a wash. So the school district is not benefiting in any way from the lottery fund money that comes in when it's deducted from the general fund. And in this case, there's a shortage. And what they do, they say, well, we got all the expenses that we need to take care of it because the city is growing so fast that we need to support that. So therefore, the other school district need to come up and make up the difference, whatever that might be in the area where they are. And I don't think it's right, but this is the way it was done.
And for our grand finale, we have here our little pie chart of how each of the things that we have discussed today is allocated as far as percentages. Mr. Idrach, would you mind helping us understand what this all means?
Well, okay, this is how in 1991, when the lottery was started, the distribution of every dollar that it was paid by buying a ticket. Back at the beginning was nothing but scratch-up tickets, and later on came the lottery, where the 6-number draw and so on. So at the beginning was 50% of the money went to prize money, and 35% went to the state general fund. The dealer used to get, the retailer used to get 5%, which now they get 5.3%, and the 50% went to the prize money. Nowadays have been increased by 17%, and now the fund for the school only get 23%. So remember that the lottery was done for the purpose of education. However, that's not what happened with the money at that time. It went to the general fund. Later on, people complained and they decided that, well, no, it got to be for education, but actually it's a wash because whatever the money we get from the lottery foundation is deducted from the general fund for school education. Back then, we didn't have the 3% for 0.3% for the veterans, and the prize money was all these changes. What it had done, it had reduced the amount of money for education that's supposed to be, but regardless of it, even 23%, the school funding have been shortchanged by 17% or so. So we have to think about those things. In reality, whether it's 35 or 23%, the legislature on the budget, they take that money off the general fund and reduce it by the contribution of the lottery. So it's just that simple, and it's actually come out of wash, like I mentioned before.
What previous legislation has done is a wash. 3.3 billion from the lottery is reduced from the general fund allocation for school education. So it's just to keep people from complaining about the lottery under Ann Richards' promise for education. It's clear that the lottery money can't and never will finance 100% of the education system. It's just that simple. Texas Comptroller Office Law Mandate. The Texas law requires that all appraisal districts must set the property at fair market value based on the market selling average price within 90% to 95%. Failure to comply could result in loss of school district education funding. So don't blame the appraisal office for doing what is required by law. They catch the heat when the problem is in the law. driving homeowners out of their homes, especially retirees. Credit Dispatch Records News.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And also the third aspect that we are going to discuss is the Texas Comptroller Office law mandate. So the Texas law requires that all appraisal districts must set the property at fair value based on the market selling average price within 90% to 95%. Mr. Idrach, explain to us how this also impacts.
All right, the Texas Comptroller Office, that the law mandate that it was created by the legislation, they are the ones that execute the law. This is what I said before, they're very sticky and complicated, and this is why. If the school district, if the appraisal district don't maintain the fair market value of the property on the selling price from 90 to 95%, and failure to comply with that, this is where it results of losses of school district educational funding. So they have, okay, so here's what happened. The Texas Comptroller Office law mandate that you have to, they have to execute the law that is given to them by the legislation that oversee that they actually, the appraisal office maintain the property value between 90 to 95% of the fair market value when it sells. This is about the selling price. It don't have nothing to do with the property worth more or less. 95% of the selling price. So failure to comply with that can result on losing the school funding, the school district funding. So this is a serious matter, because just imagine if your children all of a sudden go to school and say, well, the school is closed because we lost the funding. And here we are.
As its values grow, Austin ISD pays more of its local tax revenue to the state. Robin Hood program was a response to the 1993 Texas Supreme Court ruling in Edgewood Independent School District versus Kirby on school finance. Before the ruling, the wealthiest school districts in Texas were able to raise as much as 9 times the funding as the lowest wealth districts, according to the Center for Public Policy Priorities. To smooth out funding disparities, the legislature told high wealth school districts that were able to raise more property tax revenue, often with far lower rates, that they would need to share that excess wealth. Texas decided to recapture property tax revenue from what was deemed property wealthy districts and distribute it to property poor districts.
There we are. There's not much you can do about that. So therefore, recently, there have been several cities that they were not maintaining the proper level, and they were put on notice by the state comptroller's office that they don't bring it up within the 90 to 95% value, then they will remove the funding money that is done for the school. And this is how the law do that, to make sure that these children get the money, the $5,140 and so on that they deserve, but on the other side put a stress on the property owner that is the one that financing it.
Recently, the appraiser's office in Wilson County was put on notice by the Attorney General Office of Property Value Violation in Lavernia, Texas. They have 2 years to correct the problem, so get ready for more taxes. Doing the math. In 1986, the school budget was $5 billion, and the state provided $4.8 billion. In 2019, the budget was $32 billion, and the state provided about $20 billion. While in 1986 the shortage was about $200,000, in 2019 it is about $10 billion. Student state funding in 2019 dropped from $9,845 in 2010 to $9,226 after adjusting for inflation. That's 6.3% less per student. The federal share has also dropped from 16.4% to the total to just 9.5% in 2019. Republican Governor Greg Abbott tweeted this month that Texas will begin dismantling the flawed Robin Hood scheme that has failed our schools. State Representative Kyle Biederman, Republican from Fredericksburg, pitched legislation to stop excessive Robin Hood theft and limit how much the state can take from wealthier districts. A couple of lawmakers have filed bills to completely strike the program from state law. In my personal opinion, this will not happen. The state contribution to education every year is lower. Therefore, more money remains in the general fund. As property values and demand increase for housing, the appraisal districts mandate 95% property valuation so they can afford to pay less for education. 5 years ago, the office of the Texas governor promised to fix the property tax problem. Here is the video titled Verify. Is Robin Hood school funding broken?
And while the federal government is shut down, Texas lawmakers head back to work. The 86th legislation starts on Tuesday, and there is a lot of work to be done. Governor Greg Abbott tweeted that school finance reform and property tax reform definitely will be top priorities. We will also begin dismantling the flawed Robin Hood scheme that has failed our schools. We talk a lot about Robin Hood, but exactly where does this money go? Our David Schechter verifies.
In English folklore, Robin Hood is the hero, stealing from the rich, giving to the poor.
But in Texas, we use his name as one way to talk about how we fund education. And some people think Robin Hood is a villain.
We cannot live with this. Not one more year, not one more day.
Robin Hood is supposed to give all kids a fair chance, but some districts say the system itself has become unfair. Is that true? Is Robin Hood broken?
Here's how Robin Hood works. There is some extra money for kids who have economic disadvantages or may have special needs, but basically the state of Texas allots $5,140 for every student.
So, for example, District A has a lot of valuable property, and when it comes to taxes, it collects more than the $5,140. So the excess goes back to the state. District B is property poor. It collects less than the cost per student. So the state sends money to District B. The idea behind Robin Hood is funding should be the same for all students, no matter where they live. I'm in Plano now talking to Missy Bender. She's the school board president here.
Do you disagree with that as an idea?
No. We want to help others because having an educated population is the foundation of a democratic society. People want to help others, but there's a breaking point.
Why does she say that? Well, schools are supported by property tax. And like most of Texas, home values in Plano are rising. So Plano ISD is taking in more tax revenue. But because of Robin Hood, they don't get to keep that new tax money. They just send more and more and more back to the state. Here's what that means in real life. This year, Plano gave 2% raises to teachers, but then didn't have enough in its budget to pay for that. So it dipped into savings.
What's it like to send all that money back and then have to pass a budget that's got a hole in it?
Mm-hmm. It's heartbreaking and frustrating, and it's a little bit of a hopeless feeling. We're being starved, okay? School districts are being starved.
One proven path to long-term success in school is all-day pre-K. Plano provides it, but it's expensive. Missy says unless Texas fixes education funding, programs like this are in jeopardy.
And who wants a system like that? That's not really what we want. We don't want mediocrity. We don't want to be average. This is Texas.
Far from the manicured suburbs of North Texas are the swamps and Spanish moss of Caddo Lake in East Texas. Here at Karnak ISD, every student qualifies for a free or reduced price lunch. That means every student here is economically disadvantaged.
Hi, Tay. How are you? Good. Are you good? Are you having a good day? You making good choices? Yes, ma'am. All right, good deal.
I'm talking to Amy Dixon. She's the superintendent of this tiny district.
All children can learn, your motto indicates to me that some people are saying that children can't learn. Is somebody saying that to you? Where are you getting that message from?
I think that there's some generalizations made about economically disadvantaged, and so I think that that we have to be loud sometimes to let people know that we're here and that we're doing great things for kids.
Okay, which one are you thinking?
You might think a district like Karnak is exactly the kind of place that would benefit from Robin Hood.
Well, let's take a look.
But this year, the district, which uses donations to replace old floors and spruce up classrooms, Karnak will give back $1 million to the state.
What does it say to you that your district, 100% economically disadvantaged, pays into Robin Hood? What's it say about the system?
I think the system is completely broken. If something doesn't drastically change, this place will not exist, and that will be a shame.
Just run out of money.
I mean, it's just simple math.
Karnak is not an outlier. More and more districts are now considered rich. You might live in one. In fact, there are now 450 districts paying into Robin Hood. More money for the cost of education coming from the local level means less money coming from the state. The Texas Education Agency says the state is freed up to spend $3.5 billion less on education next budget because locals are paying so much. Let's talk to Dale Kramer. He runs a fiscally conservative group called Texas Taxpayers and Research Association.
Basically, those are ill-gotten gains. The $3.5 billion can be used to push rates down. Some portion of that might be used to enhance programs in the classroom, but $3.5 billion is enough money to make a difference in our school finance system.
Kramer says the $3.5 billion can be used both to reduce property taxes and improve education.
Remember that $51.40 per kid? If the state allotted more than $51.40, rich districts could keep more of their money. Poor districts would need to get more money from the state.
Is Robin Hood broken? Is that a system that doesn't work anymore?
You know, I don't think Robin Hood itself is broken. I think the issues that districts are having just deals with the overall amount of revenue they would like to spend.
So is Robin Hood broken? The answer is no. A level playing field is a core value of public education, and in fact, it's in the state constitution. What is broken is the legislature. At the same time, the state is spending less of its money on education and holding on to more of your tax money as home values rise. Got something you want verified? Send me an email.